Good evening, I'm Amirul Aiman. Here are the top stories for tonight. US President Donald Trump asked the Supreme Court to uphold trade tariffs after lower court defeat. And Thailand's House of Representatives is set to vote for a new Prime Minister on Friday. That and more coming up on AWANI International. Donald Trump is taking his tariff fight to the Supreme Court. The US president has asked justices to overturn a federal appeals court ruling last week that found many of his sweeping import taxes were illegal. That decision threatens to unravel his trade agenda and could force Washington to refund billions collected from importers.
Trump had declared an economic emergency in April, citing trade imbalances and national security risks. He then introduced sweeping reciprocal duties on more than 90 countries, along with separate duties on China, Canada, and Mexico. The appeals court judges ruled tariffs under emergency powers go beyond presidential authority, calling it a core power of Congress. But duties imposed under other laws like steel and aluminium remain in place. Trump, meanwhile, warned that a loss at the Supreme Court could deal serious damage to the U.S. economy. He went on to claim that the European Union had agreed to pay nearly $1 trillion under a completed deal, and suggested that if the case is lost, those agreements could be undone.
Thailand's House of Representatives is set to vote for a new Prime Minister on Friday, following the dismissal of Paetongtarn Shinawatra last week. The ruling party, Pheu Thai, has announced it will nominate veteran lawmaker Chai Kasem Nitisiri, who will go head-to-head with Bumjatai leader Anutin Chanvirakul for the premiership.
The party says it is ready to call a snap election if Chai Kasem secures enough votes on Friday. The move comes as Pheu Thai struggles to build support after the loss of Paetongtarn. This strategy could undermine a pact made just a day earlier between Bumjatai and the People's Party, the largest force in parliament, under which Anutin would have gotten decisive backing in return for promising to dissolve the House in 4 months. Earlier, Thai media reported that a royal decree to dissolve parliament, submitted by interim Prime Minister Phumtham Wechayachai, was rejected by the office of the Privy Council on legal grounds.
Stay tuned for more after the break.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda, tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada.
Welcome back. In Jakarta, Indonesian authorities have fired a police officer involved in the death of a delivery driver who was struck by an armored police vehicle during an anti-government protest. The officer, Cosmas Kajugai, was discharged after an ethics hearing found him guilty of unprofessional conduct.
Cosmas, one of the 7 officers detained, was in the front seat of the vehicle that ran over 21-year-old Afan Kurniawan. During the hearing, Cosmas broke down in tears, saying he never intended to kill anyone and was only doing his job. He is considering an appeal. Since last week, protests led by students, workers, and rights groups have spread across Indonesia against economic inequality, lawmakers' perks, and police brutality. In response to the outcry, President Prabowo Subianto announced cuts to lawmakers' generous housing and travel allowances.
Several regions in Indonesia are starting to stabilize following days of nationwide protests against lawmakers' lavish salaries, which have left at least 10 people dead. Anielo Ianon from Diponegoro University shares more on the transition back to normalcy.
You have now more military in the street and in police, but in this phase, I mean, in the transition between in the return to the normality. I mean, last yesterday there was this kind of peace declaration when the Ojol give a flower to the police. So they try actually in that aspect to come back to the normal life before the protest.
In light of the unrest, questions remain over how President Prabowo Subianto's popularity and political standing might be affected.
In terms of popularity, especially after this first week, might be kind of up and down. But I see that Prabowo has managed very quickly and fast, especially after the first huge protest, to speak with the governments, with the ministry, and understand to stop the law that create the process, the high rise of the deputy. And he tried to balance in terms of speaking and also try to let's say to control, especially Jakarta. The ongoing protest was maybe from the video was let's say take away too much balance. So in that perspective, Pablo has a very complicated situation. But now we are in the transition, so I don't see any kind of problem in terms of popularity. In terms of popularity, yes, I mean, it's up and down. I mean, if you think about, for example, after the election was very popular, especially in foreign policy. I mean, foreign policy of domestic because very good propaganda.
While protests escalated following allegations of police brutality, Aniello does not foresee Parliament acting on any police reforms in the near future.
But I don't think the reform of the kind of the penal the criminal code will become on the table in the near future. I mean, I think they will probably make it propose the kind of or reform, but it will take a little long time now, especially now after protest. Maybe the government must think to postpone the reform, to change the reform. Yeah, it's a very black box. We don't know in this time what's going to happen.
India has announced tax cuts on hundreds of consumer items, from soaps to small cars, in an attempt to spur domestic demand. The measures comes as 50% US tariffs took effect, raising concerns about a potential economic slowdown.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said the reform simplifies GST into two rates, 5% and 18%, while removing tax on life and health insurance policies. The cut is set to take effect on September 22, with taxes on everyday items such as toothpaste and shampoo falling from 18% to 5%, and rates on small cars, air conditioners, and televisions from 28% to 18%. The move will cost India's federal and state governments an estimated $5.5 billion, but economists say it may offset the impact of US tariffs. This change is expected to benefit FMCG giants like Hindustan Unilever, Godrej, and electronics makers including Samsung, LG, and Sony, and automakers like Maruti and Toyota. The rush to cut the tax was triggered by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's call for greater self-reliance in India, vowing last month to lower the GST by October to counter punishing US tariffs.
China's Grand Parade marking 80 years since the end of World War II should have highlighted the United States' role in defeating Japan, says President Donald Trump. Referring to Chinese President Xi Jinping as a friend, Trump made the comments just hours after accusing Xi of conspiring with Russia's Vladimir Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un against the US.
I was very surprised. I watched the speech last night. President Xi is a friend of mine, but I thought that the United States should have been mentioned last night during that speech because we helped China very much.
On Wednesday's event, Xi thanked foreign governments and international allies that supported China but did not emphasize America's role in the war. Japan's invasion of China in 1937 marked a major escalation that eventually led to World War II in Asia. The US entered the war in 1941, providing support to Chinese forces fighting Japan before Tokyo's surrender in 1945.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has promised full support for Russia's army, calling it a fraternal duty, according to state media KCNA. This follows a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of China's military parade in central Beijing. KCA reported that both leaders exchanged candid opinions on international and regional issues, as well as long-term plans for partnership. Putin also reportedly praised North Korean soldiers fighting against Ukraine, describing ties between the two countries as special. North Korea has sent troops and weapons to Russia in support of its war on Kyiv. Earlier this week, South Korean intelligence estimates suggested some 2,000 North Korean soldiers deployed to fight for Russia have been killed. Kim's trip to Beijing marked his first public meeting with both Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping and offered opportunities to mingle with more than 24 other world leaders. He is expected to hold talks on bilateral ties with Xi, but it is not yet known when the meeting would take place. Youth voices took center stage today at the 18th ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on the Environment, with delegates from UNICEF's ASEAN Children and Youth Climate Summit presenting their climate action recommendations directly to ASEAN ministers. Reporting from Langkawi, here's Fahana Sheikh.
I am here in Langkawi for the 18th ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on the Environment, and it's a significant day for the youth delegates of the UNICEF's ASEAN Children and Youth Climate Summit 2025 as they officially handed over their climate action recommendations to ASEAN ministers. Now, among the proposals were better youth participation, climate justice, as well as climate change education. So let's hear from Celeste and Suvisal on what it meant for them to share their ideas directly to regional leaders.
It was a lot of pressure because Sabah in general is very underrepresented. We don't really have our voice heard in regional conversations, and so it's such a privilege standing here. And I know I'm really not standing by myself, and so this moment itself just meant so much to me. And like like last night, I was like crying thinking about it, and it felt like when I was there, I wasn't really speaking as Celeste. I was speaking as the daughter of Sabah. I think honestly, again, it's so easy to feel small, as youth across ASEAN. It's really easy to feel small, and it's easy to feel like we can't really get our voices heard. But I've said this before, and you just need one spark, and when you have many sparks together, they all join up, and it becomes unstoppable. You can't avoid it.
This declaration for the 100 youth delegates. They have been working hard to draft this declaration to share their ideas, thoughts, challenges, and also propose their solutions for this declaration to happen. And this moment is very momentous for us because this is the first time that a youth declaration on environment is being formally introduced into the ASEAN environmental meeting. So I feel very proud about it. I think one of the most important challenge that the ASEAN youth is facing right now is regarding education. So climate and environmental education is still limited across the ASEAN countries, and we hope that the ASEAN ministers will consider to implement education on climate, on environment, into formal education and also informal education such as online knowledge hub or through community education.
With that, the ACYCS 2025 comes to a close. It's been a meaningful 3 days of discussions, hands-on learning, networking, and climate stories across the region. Delegates leave with a clear message. Children and young people must stay at the forefront of climate action in ASEAN and beyond. That's all from me, Fahana Shea, reporting from Langkawi, signing off.
That report wraps up AWANI International tonight. Stay tuned for our reports on the rivalries, strategies, and the shifts behind the power affairs driving the new global order. Visit international.astroawani.com and our social media accounts for more. I'm Amirul Aiman. Thank you for watching. Good night.